All right, viewers, staying with updates from the Israel-Hamas war. Now, the Qatari Prime Minister has said that a deal between Israel and Hamas on return of hostages is close to fruition.
Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman has said that his confidence is growing and that a deal will be reached soon. Sheikh Mohammed said that the challenges facing the agreement are just practical and logistical.
The deal is going through ups and downs from time to time throughout the last few weeks, but I think that I'm now more confident that we are close enough to reach to a deal that can bring the people safely back to their homes, whether they are the hostages on Hamas side or whatever the exchange that will take place from the Israeli side.
This even as a member of Israel's war cabinet, Benny Gantz said that his priority is to get the hostages back. He added that Israel has decades if they needed to destroy Hamas, but the country does not have that much time to return the abducted people back home.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the White House rejected a Washington Post report which claimed that Israel, US and Hamas had reached an agreement to release the hostages. It said a deal on release of hostages would happen in exchange for a 5-day pause in fighting.
Netanyahu also said that there is no deal on the table and that he cannot elaborate further. And according to reports, Hamas is ready to release 60 to 70 hostages. They demand a 5-day ceasefire. However, Israel is against this idea, as it claims Hamas will use the ceasefire to regroup.
ونقول للاحتلال الذي تجاوزت خسائره 180 دبابة وناقلة جند وآلية عسكرية ومئات القتلى والجرحى في صفوف جنوده وضباطه خلال أسبوعين فقط. نحن لازلنا في بداية المعركة ولازلنا في أول الطريق وأول الشوط، وإن القادم بإذن الله أكبر وأعظم.
Families of the hostages continue to pile pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister for their release.
Thousands of marchers, including relatives of more than 50 hostages held by Hamas, reached the Prime Minister's office on Saturday. However, on Friday, they had embarked on their fourth leg of a 5-day walk from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and called on the Israeli government to bring some 240 hostages home. Now, the marchers traversed 70 kilometers to Netanyahu's office and urged Israel's war cabinet to do more to rescue their loved ones.
Now, early in the war, Qatar negotiated a deal with Hamas to free 2 American Israeli hostages. A few days later, the militants released 2 elderly Israeli women, but since then, nothing substantial has happened.
You go with this one? You go with this lady? Okay.
All right, to discuss matters further, joining us on the broadcast right here on World DNA from Monterey, we have Professor James A. Russell. He is an associate professor in the Department of National Security at the Naval Postgraduate School. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you here. Sir, the death toll has gone up to nearly 13,000. No ceasefire in sight. Israel has gone through northern Gaza, pretty much all through the northern side of Gaza. What's the end game here? If we just take a larger picture, where is this heading? What is Israel essentially trying to achieve? And where does it go from here?
Well, I can't speak for the Israeli government, obviously, but it appears as if what we are going to be left with at the end of Israeli military operations is a completely destroyed urban infrastructure throughout Gaza, in the north and the south. If we take a look around the Middle East, for example, after the wars, so to speak, in places like Tripoli and places like Fallujah, this is what we are confronting, where we're going to have a refugee population of 2.5 million people that are going to be needing care and feeding in the winter. There's going to be no infrastructure left. It's all going to be destroyed.
And as the humanitarian crisis deepens, Mr. Russell, I'd also like to ask you, with the latest report that's come in, that the Houthis have claimed to have seized an Israeli cargo ship in the southern Red Sea. However, Tel Aviv is denying that. Now, irrespective, this does kind of pose a threat to the war turning into a wider conflict. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on it are that, as the great German war strategist Karl von Clausewitz would remind us, is that when wars kick off, they take unpredictable turns and they develop a logic all of their own. And this clearly is a case in this war, in which the Houthis, for example, have emerged as this third party that's attempting to enter the conflict. U.S. naval vessels have shot down several drones and missiles coming from the Houthis towards Israel. And this latest step by the Houthis is just another example of their attempt to enter the conflict indirectly. And I should also add that again, as has been reported in the press, that Iran's proxies have been shelling U.S. military installations in Syria. So the point is that once the lead starts flying, as it has been, you get into unpredictable territory and with escalation potential, and that's what we're looking at.
Professor, are civilian casualties just an inevitable, unfortunate consequence of the actions which are going on? Was there any other way Israel could have gone into Gaza and to avoid any kind of civilian casualties? Because they've also released footage, what they claim is another tunnel which was right under the Al-Shifa compound, which they have been claiming about since a while. Was there a better way to do it?
No. The short answer is no. I was frankly kind of distressed to hear the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken be calling, he was calling for a more sort of selective targeting approach. And in a war like this, it's really not possible. Again, I go back to this metaphor of looking at places like Tripoli, look at places like Fallujah, look at Aleppo. These places are being blasted apart by high caliber weapons that are being fired from relatively close ranges. And who bears the brunt of all of this carnage? It's innocent civilians. I'm frankly not interested in the tunnel complex or whether it exists or doesn't. We're getting all this, sort of sports event-like reporting on it. And the bottom line is that innocent civilians are on the receiving end of indiscriminate violence that are war crimes. This is what's going on from both sides, from Hamas and from Israel.
Professor, do you see a hostage deal in the works, as Qatar seems positive, but Israel does not really seem to have confirmed it?
Well, I can only repeat to you what I read in the press about it, which is that the press reports in the Washington Post, for example, seem to indicate that, quoting Israeli sources, that there was some kind of deal that was possible. And again, this gets back to this central issue. Innocent civilians shouldn't be part of this equation. and the hostages, I understand what Hamas is trying to do here, which is to bring visibility and attention onto the plight of the Palestinians. I think they've succeeded in doing that. But the point is, I'm not sure at this point what effect can be generated by continuing to hold these hostages, which are innocent civilians. They should give them up.
All right, Professor James Russell, always a pleasure to have you here on World DNA, getting all your insights on this, and hope to speak with you soon. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you very much.